What if your new, perfect family came with a ghost from your worst nightmare? Alara thought she'd found her happy ending with Liam, a kind man with a warm, loving family. But on the night she meets them, the door opens to reveal her fiancé's charming cousin, who just happens to be the man who abandoned her 5 years ago after a life-changing secret. Now he's back, wearing a friendly smile but armed with a cruel whisper. Long time no see. So, how's the kid? Trapped in a web of old lies and new threats, Alara must fight to protect her future from the man who already destroyed her past. Disclaimer. This channel features fictional psychological stories created for emotional exploration and storytelling purposes. All characters and events are fictional. Alara had never believed in fairy tales, not really. Not until Liam. And as she stood on the pristine porch of his childhood home, the scent of jasmine and freshly cut grass in the warm evening air, she thought maybe, just maybe, she'd been wrong. Maybe they did exist, and hers had simply arrived a little later than expected. Inside, the house hummed with a warmth that had nothing to do with the oven roasting a chicken. It was in the worn, comfortable sofa, the family photos climbing the stairwell, and the easy laughter that floated from the kitchen. Liam's mother, Susan, had pulled her into a hug that smelled of lavender and cinnamon, whispering, "We've been waiting to meet you, sweetheart." His father, John, had winked, handing her a glass of iced tea before she could even ask. It was so profoundly normal, so deeply kind, that Alara felt a sudden, surprising sting of tears behind her eyes. She blinked them away, smiling. 1.5 years. That's how long she'd been loved by Liam. He wasn't just handsome with his kind hazel eyes and easy smile. He was steady. He was the man who remembered her coffee order, who celebrated her promotions louder than she did, who listened, really listened, when she spoke. He was a sanctuary after a lifetime of dating boys who played games and men who kept score. As a project manager, Alara was good at spotting flaws and risks. With Liam, she'd finally stopped looking for them. "You okay?" Liam's voice was soft in her ear, his hand finding the small of her back. He looked at her like she was the most fascinating thing in the room, even in his parents' living room filled with decades of memories. "More than okay," she breathed, leaning into him. "They're wonderful." Dinner was a chorus of clinking silverware and shared stories. John recounted Liam's disastrous first attempt at driving a tractor, and Alara laughed until her sides ached. She felt woven into the fabric of the moment, a new welcome thread in the pattern of their family. As Susan brought out a peach cobbler, Liam cleared his throat, his fingers lacing with Alara's on the checkered tablecloth. His eyes sparkled with a secret. "So, everyone," he announced, his voice warm with pride, "there's one more important person who couldn't make it earlier. My cousin, my absolute best friend growing up. He just flew back from his MBA program in the States yesterday. He texted me and said, 'Don't you dare let me miss meeting her. He should be here any minute.'" Alara's heart swelled. Another person who loved Liam, eager to welcome her. She squeezed his hand, beaming. "I can't wait to meet him," she said, and she meant it. The doorbell rang, a cheerful chime that echoed through the house. "That's him," Susan said, bustling up. "Right on time for dessert." The world held its breath for the length of a heartbeat. Alara turned her smile toward the foyer, expectant, open. The door swung open. A tall man stood silhouetted against the dusk, a travel bag slung over his shoulder. He stepped into the light of the hallway, and the air in Alara's lungs turned to stone. Time didn't just slow, it fractured. It splintered into 1,000 shards of a past she had painstakingly buried. The confident posture, the sweep of dark hair, the perfectly angled jaw. It was a face she had traced with her fingers, memorized in dreams and then in nightmares. It was a face that had, for one blinding, beautiful summer 5 years ago, been her entire universe. Daniel. The name exploded in her skull, silent and catastrophic. The delicate porcelain dessert fork slipped from her numb fingers. It hit her plate with a sharp, discordant clang that seemed to reverberate through her bones. The lively chatter around the table muffled, warped, as if she were suddenly submerged in deep water. She could feel the blood draining from her face, a cold, prickling tide, rushing from her cheeks down to her trembling hands, which she clutched in her lap. Her heart wasn't beating. It was a frantic, trapped bird slamming against her ribs. 5 years. He had been the graduate student home for the summer, all easy charm and reckless promises. He'd made her feel chosen, then discarded. She had been left with 2 pink lines on a test and a voicemail that had gone straight to a robotic greeting. Her final text to him had been a desperate, "We need to talk, it's urgent." His reply, which she could still see burned onto the back of her eyelids, was a cold, concise, "Stop bothering me, you're not worth the trouble." She'd navigated the grief, the difficult choices, the long silence afterward on alone. She had built a new life, brick by careful brick, and he had been the ghost in the foundation, a shadow she refused to acknowledge. Now the ghost was walking into Liam's dining room, hanging up his coat as if he belonged. Daniel's gaze swept the room, landing on Liam with a familiar, brotherly grin. Then it moved to her. His eyes, those same intelligent, calculating eyes, met hers. For a fraction of a second, they flickered. A micro-expression, a tiny, almost imperceptible tightening at the corner of his mouth. A hint of recognition? Shock? It was gone before she could decipher it, smoothed into a mask of polite, handsome amiability. "Sorry I'm late, everyone. Traffic from the city was a beast," he said, his voice the same smooth baritone that once used to whisper in her ear. He walked up toward the table, his focus shifting to Liam. "Daniel!" Liam stood, pulling his cousin into a backslapping hug. "Everyone, this is the legend himself. Daniel, this is Alara, my future wife." Daniel turned to her fully. He extended his hand across the table, his smile perfect, benign. "Alara, what a beautiful name. Liam hasn't stopped talking about you. It's a real pleasure to finally meet you." The room was watching. Susan was smiling warmly. John was nodding. Liam was looking at her, his face full of love and the joy of uniting his 2 worlds. She was trapped in a grotesque tableau. Mechanically, her body moving on autopilot, Alara lifted her icy hand. His fingers closed around hers. His grip was firm, warm, terrifyingly real. He didn't let go immediately. Instead, he leaned in, as if to kiss her cheek in greeting. He stopped an inch away. His lips were right by her ear, his breath a faint whisper against her skin, masked by the resumed chatter around them. His public smile never wavered, but the words that slithered into her ear, for her alone, were sharp as shattered glass. "Long time no see," he murmured, his tone deceptively gentle, almost intimate. "So, how's the kid?" The world tilted. The warm, buttery light of the dining room became a dizzying glare. Alara's hand shot out, gripping the edge of the tablecloth until her knuckles turned bone white. The patterned fabric was the only real thing she could feel. "Whoa, hey." Liam's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. His face swam into focus, his brows knitted with genuine concern. He put a warm hand over her frozen one. "Alara, you okay? You just went pale as a sheet." She tried to speak, but her tongue was a clumsy, heavy thing. I'm fine, just a sudden wave of tiredness. Long day." The lie tasted like ash. She couldn't look at him. Her eyes were magnetically, horrifyingly drawn back to the man now taking a seat directly across from her. Daniel settled in, as if he owned the chair. He accepted a plate of cobbler from Susan with a charming, "Thank you, Aunt Sue." His smile, never reaching the cool, assessing eyes that flickered to Alara in a way, like a predator noting the panic of its prey before deciding to play with it a little longer. "So, Daniel," John boomed, carving a fresh slice of chicken for him. "New York. Was it everything they say?" And just like that, Daniel launched into a story. It was about a high-stakes deal, a last-minute negotiation in a glass skyscraper overlooking Central Park. He spoke with easy confidence, his hands moving to illustrate a point. He was the picture of the successful worldly cousin returned home. Liam listened, nodding along, so proud of him. In every few sentences, Daniel's gaze would drift. It would land on Alara, hold for a heartbeat too long, a secret and terrifying acknowledgement, before sliding back to his uncle. Each glance was a needle prick to her composure. Through it all, Liam's thumb stroked the back of her hand. His touch, once her sanctuary, now felt like a chain. He was so blissfully, painfully unaware. "You have no idea, Dan," Liam said, cutting into his cousin's story with brotherly enthusiasm. He squeezed Alara's hand, pulling her into the conversation she was mentally fleeing. "Look at her, isn't she just everything? I still can't believe I got this lucky, found my absolute gem." Alara forced her lips into something resembling a smile. It felt like cracking plaster. Daniel leaned back, his eyes sweeping over her in a slow, deliberate arc that made her skin crawl. "Oh, I can see it," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "You've always had an eye for quality, Liam." The dinner dragged on, a slow-motion torture. Ilara moved food around her plate, every bite threatening to stick in her throat. The laughter and chatter became a distorted buzz. She was trapped in a glass box, screaming silently while the happy family dinner played out around her. As Susan began clearing the dessert plates, she sighed, a happy, contented sound. She patted Ilara's shoulder. You two are such a perfect match. So in love. Just promise me you won't wait too long to start a family. This old house needs the pitter-patter of little feet again. It was a sweet, grandmotherly nudge, a normal thing to say. Daniel dabbed his mouth with a napkin, a faint, knowing smile on his lips. Oh, I'm sure they will, he chimed in, his tone light, conversational. Ilara strikes me as the type who'd be a wonderful mother. He paused, letting his eyes meet hers directly across the table. She seems like she'd have a natural instinct for it. The air vanished from Ilara's lungs. His words were a scalpel, precise and cruel. A natural instinct, Hev. The ghost of a child she never got to hold, a loss that had hollowed her out years ago, a grief tied inextricably to him, was suddenly in the room, sitting at the table, in his sly, insinuating smile. She choked, a sip of water going down the wrong way. A coughing fit seized her, violent and genuine, giving her an excuse to cover her face, to hide the tears of shock and rage that sprang to her eyes. Okay, that's it, Liam said, his arm around her. You're really not yourself. Let's get you some air. No, she said, too sharply. She softened her voice, pulling away gently. No, I'm okay. Just need a moment. The bathroom. I'll be right back. She didn't wait for a response. She pushed her chair back, the legs screeching against the floor, and walked as steadily as she could manage out of the dining room, down the hall, and into the guest bathroom. She shut the door, turned the lock with trembling fingers, and collapsed against the cool wood. Her breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. She pressed her fist to her mouth to stifle the sob that clawed its way up. The memory, always a dull ache, was now a fresh, gaping wound. The loneliness of that clinic, the emptiness that followed, the silent shame she'd carried because she had loved the father who wanted nothing to do with either of them. Daniel had not just abandoned her, he had erased her, and the possibility of their child with a single text message. And now he was here, in the home of the good man she loved, using that ancient pain as a weapon. She splashed cold water on her face, staring at her terrified reflection in the mirror. Get it together, get through the night. Then figure this out. A soft click. The doorknob turned. The lock, old and simple, disengaged with a gentle nudge from what must have been a pin or a key. The door swung inward. Daniel stood in the hallway, one hand casually braced against the doorframe, blocking her exit. Before she could scream, before she could even process his intrusion, he stepped inside. The space was small, meant for one. His presence filled it, making the walls feel like they were pressing in. He closed the door softly behind him, enclosing them in the sterile, perfumed air. He didn't touch her. He didn't need to. He just looked at her, his gaze a slow, invasive crawl from her tear-streaked face down to her shaking hands and back up. A cold, appreciative smile touched his lips. You've held up well, Ilara, he murmured, his voice a low, intimate hum in the tiny room. Still as beautiful as you were, maybe more. She pressed herself against the sink, the cold porcelain biting into her back. Get out, she hissed, the words trembling. He ignored her. He took a half-step closer, shrinking the already claustrophobic space. The scent of his cologne, expensive and unfamiliar, invaded her senses. It was nothing like the clean, woodsy smell Liam wore. Liam seems very happy, Daniel mused, tilting his head as if studying a curious specimen. He talks about you like you're some angel who fell into his lap. He has no idea about your history, does he? He paused, letting the threat hang in the air between them, thick and sour. Or should I say, our history, about the little complication we had. The word complication shattered her last shred of control. Shut up, she gasped, a desperate, raw sound. Don't you dare say another word. Daniel's smile widened, a genuine flash of pleasure at her panic. He reached out, not to grab her, but to adjust a stray strand of her hair with a mock tenderness that made her flinch violently. He let his hand drop. All right, he said softly, as if agreeing to a simple request. I can be quiet. I can be the perfect supportive cousin. It's really very simple. He leaned in, his mouth inches from her ear, just like at the dinner table. His whisper was a venomous promise, as long as you behave. The morning light through the guest room curtains felt like an accusation. Alara had spent the night staring at the ceiling, Liam's steady breathing beside her a painful reminder of the lie she was now living. As soon as the first bird sang, she was packing her overnight bag with frantic, quiet movements. "Hey, what's the rush?" Liam's voice was thick with sleep. He sat up, his hair adorably mussed, and her heart broke a little. "I thought we'd have breakfast with everyone. Mom's making pancakes. I have a mountain of work waiting. A project deadline I forgot about," Ilara said, not meeting his eyes as she zipped her bag. It was a flimsy excuse, and she knew it. Liam's face fell. He got out of bed and came to her, taking her hands. "Honey, are you sure you're okay? Last night, you were so quiet after dinner. Did Daniel say something weird? He can be a bit intense." Did he say something? The question was a trapdoor beneath her feet. She forced a laugh that sounded tinny and false. No, he was fine. I just didn't sleep well. A strange bed, you know? Before Liam could press further, she blurted out, "Let's just go home, please. I need to be in my own space." He studied her face, concern etching lines around his eyes. Okay, let me just tell Mom and Dad we're skipping breakfast." He pulled on a t-shirt and headed for the door, pausing. "Oh, but I promised Daniel we'd meet him for coffee this morning before we go. He's got some business proposal he wants to run by me. He hit a rough patch with his investors in New York and needs a local partner. Said I'm the only one he trusts." Alara's blood ran cold. "Business? With you?" "Yeah, it's actually really exciting," Liam said, his face brightening with the enthusiasm she usually loved. Now it terrified her. "He's got connections, I've got the capital and the local know-how. He's even moving into that new luxury complex downtown near our place. It'll be great to have family close by." The walls of the cozy bedroom seemed to shrink. He wasn't leaving. Daniel was weaving himself into the very fabric of their future. By the time they came downstairs, Daniel was already in the kitchen, looking crisp and accomplished in a button-down shirt. He handed Liam a mug of coffee. "Morning, brother." Then his eyes slid to Alara. That same cold, knowing glint. "Alara, you look like you could use something warming. Tea, perhaps, or..." He paused, a smirk playing on his lips. "Warm milk? I seem to remember you had a taste for that." The casual cruelty of it stole her breath. A harmless question to anyone else. To her, it was a grenade rolled into the room, a direct reference to the nausea of early pregnancy, to the comfort she'd once sought from him. Liam, pouring juice, didn't notice a thing. The week that followed was a masterclass in psychological torture. Publicly, Daniel was perfect. He helped John fix a leaky faucet, spent hours talking market trends with Liam, and brought Susan flowers to thank her for her hospitality. He was the prodigal cousin returned, humble and helpful. Liam's parents adored him. Liam himself was energized, talking constantly about the synergy of their new venture. But in the stolen moments, when Liam ran to grab a file, when they passed in the hallway at Liam's apartment building where Daniel was now moving boxes, the mask slipped. "That red dress you're wearing," he murmured one evening as she brought in mail, his voice low. "It's a good color on you. Almost as good as the one you wore that weekend in Monterey. Remember the view from our room?" Another time, as she was leaving the gym in their building, he was entering. He held the door with a mock gallant bow. "Off so soon? You used to have more stamina." His eyes dropped to her midsection for a fraction of a second. Each comment was a barb, a reminder that he owned a piece of her history that could destroy her present. The fear began to curdle into something else. A cold, hard determination. She couldn't just be his victim. She had to know what game he was really playing. Her chance came on Friday. Liam had asked Daniel over to review financial projections. Daniel's sleek laptop was left open on their living room coffee table while he and Liam stepped onto the balcony to take a call from a potential supplier. Her heart hammered against her ribs. It was a violation, she knew that. But the greater violation was happening to her life. She stole a glance at the balcony. Their backs were turned. In one swift, silent movement, she slid onto the couch and angled the laptop toward her. Her fingers trembled over the trackpad. She clicked on the email icon. Most were mundane. Then she saw a name, Victor. The subject line, bridge financing and next steps. She opened it. The email chain was chilling. Daniel writing to Victor, "Liam is completely on board. Trusts me implicitly. The family narrative is solid. The 500K seed investment commitment is almost finalized. Just need a little more time to smooth things over with the fiancé. She's suspicious, but manageable. Victor's reply, just keep him comfortable. The dummy corporate shells are ready. Once the money hits, we phase out contact. Make sure the fiancé doesn't blow this. Handle her. Daniel's final line, don't worry about her. I have the perfect leverage. She's not a problem. Ilara's hand flew to her mouth. It wasn't just harassment. It was a calculated, predatory scam. Daniel was using their past, his family access, to systematically con the kind, trusting man who adored him. And she was the leverage to be handled. That night, after Daniel had left with a friendly clap on Liam's shoulder, Ilara moved through a fog. Liam chatted excitedly about the project's potential, about how Daniel's big city experience was going to take his company to the next level. She watched his honest, open face and felt sick. She stood at a crossroads, telling him the truth about Daniel, about the scam, about their past, would unleash chaos. It would hurt him unimaginably. He might not even believe her. Daniel had set the stage perfectly. The loyal cousin versus the new suspicious fiancé. But not telling him meant letting him walk off a financial cliff. She paced their bedroom, her phone a heavy weight in her hand. Should she show him the emails? But how did she get them? She'd have to admit to snooping. Would that make her look guilty, like she was trying to sabotage his family? As she stood there, paralyzed by fear and love, her phone buzzed on the dresser with a sharp, sudden vibration. It was a text from an unknown number. The words glowed on the screen, each one a punch to the gut. I know you looked at my laptop. Clever girl. But if you're stupid enough to tell Liam anything about us, about the deal, I'll make sure he and his entire family hear a different story. I'll tell them you got pregnant to trap me, took my money for an abortion when I said no, and then, hungry for a richer target, you set your sights on my innocent cousin. Let's see who they believe. The room spun. She gripped the dresser to stay upright. A second message blinked into existence below the first. Some P.S. I still have the sonogram photo. A beautiful keepsake, don't you think? The city, once a place of possibility, became a maze where Ilara was perpetually the prey. It started with coincidences so frequent they felt like a cruel joke. The Tuesday she decided to work from her favorite cafe, Daniel walked in 15 minutes later, ordering a black coffee and taking the armchair directly in her line of sight. At the gym, she'd feel a prickling on the back of her neck and turn to see him on a treadmill watching her in the mirror. In the supermarket, she'd reach for a carton of milk, and his hand would brush hers as he grabbed the one behind it. Oh, Ilara, small world, he'd say each time, his voice a low, intimate hum that felt like a violation in a public space. The encounters were brief, but designed to unnerve. In the elevator of her own office building, the doors slid shut, and it was just the two of them. He stood too close behind her, the heat of his body against her back. She could smell his cologne, a scent she now associated with dread. As the elevator climbed, he leaned in, his breath stirring the hair by her ear. Your perfume, he murmured, so quietly she almost thought she imagined it. You still wear the same one. She flinched forward, pressing against the cold metal doors. He merely smiled as they pinged open, stepping out as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Liam was living in a different universe, a happy one. I know I've been busy, he said one night over takeout, his eyes bright with tired excitement. But this deal with Daniel, it's a game changer. The due diligence is solid. His contacts are legit. It feels like all the pieces are finally falling into place. He reached across the table, squeezing her hand. And having him around as family, it just feels right. We're so lucky, Ilara. Our little family is just getting bigger and better. Family. The word was a cage. She was trapped between the man she loved, who saw only sunshine, and the predator he called brother, who controlled her with shadows. The tension built inside her like pressure in a kettle, steaming, whistling silently, until she feared she'd scream. It must have shown on her face in the way she jumped at sudden noises, in the dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. One evening as they were getting ready for bed, Liam stopped brushing his teeth and turned to her, his reflection in the mirror serious. Hey, he said, his voice soft. Talk to me. You've been on edge for weeks. Is it the wedding planning, work? He paused, wiping his mouth. Or is it Daniel? Has he done something to make you uncomfortable? It was the opening she had both craved and feared. Her eyes filled with immediate traitorous tears. The truth surged to her lips. Yes, he's a monster. He's blackmailing me. He's going to ruin you. But the memory of that text, of the sonogram photo, clamped her mouth shut. Daniel's fabricated story played in her head. The gold digger, the abortion, the calculated move on his cousin. She saw the doubt that could cloud Liam's loving eyes, the fracture that would never heal. She looked down, blinking the tears away. No, she whispered, the lie tasting bitter. He hasn't done anything. He's just intense. I guess I'm just shy around new people in the family. I want everyone to like me. Liam's shoulders relaxed. He pulled her into a hug, his chin resting on her head. Oh, sweetheart. They all adore you, especially Daniel. He told me he thinks you're perfect for me. He held her for a moment, then added, his voice heavy with memory, You know, I owe him more than you can imagine. When we were teenagers, I got caught in a rip. I was going under, sure I was done for. Daniel saw from the shore. He dove in, fought the current, and dragged me back. The lifeguard said another 30 seconds, and I'd have been gone. He pulled back, his eyes earnest. He saved my life. He's family, in every sense that matters. The story was a shackle, expertly applied. How could she attack the man who had given Liam his future? The next afternoon, a new text buzzed on her work phone from another unknown number. On coffee, family talk, 3 p.m., the grind, see you there. Her fingers trembled as she typed her refusal. I can't, I'm busy. The reply was instantaneous. 15 minutes, the place across from your office. If you're not there, I'll call Liam and tell him you and I have been getting reacquainted. That dinner at his parents'? It reignited old feelings. We've been meeting in secret. He'll believe me. You know he will. At 2:58 p.m., Ilara walked into the stark, modern coffee shop across the street. Her legs felt like wood. Daniel was already there, at a corner table away from the windows, sipping an espresso as if he hadn't a care in the world. He didn't stand as she approached. She slid into the chair opposite him, not bothering to take off her coat. What do you want? Straight to business, I like that, he said, setting his cup down with a delicate clink. It's simple. I need you to talk to Liam. Be excited about the investment. Tell him you've looked over the proposal. I'll send you a sanitized version. And you think it's a brilliant opportunity. Encourage him to sign the partnership agreement next week. Her stomach turned. No, I won't help you steal from him. Daniel's smile was thin and cold. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. Then you're choosing the alternative? You're okay with me telling Liam a story? Let's see. How about the tale of a young woman who got pregnant by her wealthy boyfriend, demanded money for an solution? When he wasn't ready, and then, finding herself alone and ambitious, set her sights on his kinder, more trusting younger cousin, the perfect mark. The perfect... You're a liar, she hissed, her voice low and shaking. Am I? Ja, his tone light, conversational. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. He didn't hand it to her. He simply slid it across the table, just far enough for her to see. It was a grainy black and white ultrasound image. The date in the corner was from 5 years ago, a tiny bean-shaped blur. Her vision swam. She remembered that appointment, the cold gel, the hopeful terror, the way she'd clutched that very printout, dreaming of a future he had already decided to destroy. A beautiful keepsake, Daniel said, his finger tapping the edge of the photo. Proof of a life, proof of your choice, and proof of our history. He let the image sit there between them, a landmine on the polished wood. So, Ilara, who do you think Liam will believe? His brother, his savior, with a tangible piece of the past? Or you, the woman who conveniently never mentioned knowing his favorite cousin? He leaned back, his eyes never leaving her pale, horrified face. The question hung in the air, not needing an answer. They both already knew. The house was full of laughter, the warm scent of roasted meat and birthday cake, and the clinking of wine glasses. Susan beamed, surrounded by her family, Liam's arm around her shoulders. It should have been a perfect night. For Ilara, it was a minefield. She moved through the party with a plastered-on smile, her eyes constantly tracking Daniel. He held court by the fireplace, telling a story that had everyone chuckling, the perfect, charming guest. But his gaze kept finding her, a silent promise of the private hell that awaited. As the night wore on, she noticed him drinking more. His laughter grew louder, his gestures more expansive. It felt performative. When he stumbled slightly, reaching for a bottle of whiskey, Liam clapped him on the back. Easy there, hero. You're not as young as you used to be. Daniel waved him off with a sloppy grin. Just celebrating my favorite aunt. A few minutes later, Alara was rinsing a plate in the kitchen, grasping for a moment of solitude, when his presence materialized behind her. She felt him before she saw him, a shift in the air. Need some air, he announced loudly to the room, his words slightly slurred. Then his hand closed around her upper arm, his grip deceptively strong under the guise of drunken clumsiness. Come keep me company, Alara. Don't let me fall off the balcony. Before she could protest, he was steering her through the sliding glass doors, his fingers digging into her flesh. The cool night air hit her face, a stark contrast to the heat of his hand. The balcony was dim, lit only by soft outdoor sconces. As soon as the door clicked shut, muffling the party sounds, his demeanor shifted. The drunken slouch straightened. His grip didn't loosen. It tightened, pulling her closer to the railing, away from the door. Let go of me, she said, her voice low and shaking with fury. He didn't. He brought his face close to hers. The smell of whiskey was strong, but his eyes, gleaming in the half-light, were sharp and focused. No trace of a haze. All these years, he breathed, the alcohol in his breath warm against her cheek. I never forgot you. The taste of you. Revulsion, pure and hot, surged through her. Take your hands off me, Daniel, now! He chuckled, a dark, grating sound. You're still the same. All fire and fight. His other hand came up to trap her face, his thumb brushing her jaw in a mock caress. You know, it's what I liked best. The way you'd struggle. It made winning so much sweeter. This wasn't a drunken mistake. It was a reenactment. A power play. Rage, white and blinding, erased her fear. She twisted violently, trying to wrench her arm free. Get away from me! Her resistance seemed to thrill him. His smile turned predatory, just like old times. In one brutal movement, he used his weight to shove her back against the rough, stucco wall of the house. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. Before she could scream, his mouth crashed down on hers. It wasn't a kiss, it was an assault. A violation. His lips were hard, demanding, tasting of whiskey and malice. She froze for a second, trapped in a memory of a different time, a different feeling. Then her body reacted. A primal, furious survival instinct. She wrenched her head to the side, breaking the horrible contact. With every ounce of strength fueled by humiliation and rage, her free hand flew up. The slap cracked through the night air, sharp as a gunshot. Her palm connected with his cheek with a stinging impact that reverberated up her arm. Daniel's head snapped to the side. He went still. Slowly, he turned back to face her. A red, angry mark bloomed on his pale skin. For a terrifying second, she thought she had unleashed his real violence. But then his lips curved. Not in pain, not in anger. In a slow, triumphant smile. A winner's smile. His eyes darted over her shoulder towards the sliding door. The sound of the door opening was her sentence. Everything okay out here? We heard a... Liam's voice cut off. Time seemed to stop and then speed up at a nightmarish pace. In the blink of an eye, Daniel's entire body collapsed in on itself. He dropped to his knees on the cold balcony tiles, his hands coming up to clutch his head. The arrogant predator was gone, replaced by a picture of abject, drunken remorse. His voice, now thick with a sob, shattered the silence. Alara, forgive me, please. I'm so sorry. I had too much to drink. I lost my head. I still have feelings for you. I never got over you. The performance was flawless. The broken man, brought low by love and liquor, begging forgiveness from the object of his misplaced passion. Alara stood frozen, her back against the wall, her stinging hand still half raised. She saw Liam standing in the doorway, his face draining of all color until it was sheet white. Behind him, the silhouettes of his father, John, and a couple of family friends loomed, their expressions a mix of shock and dawning judgment. Every pair of eyes in that doorway was fixed on her. On the woman who had been caught in a dark, secret embrace with her fiancé's cousin. On the woman who had just struck him. The story wrote itself in their horrified gazes. The temptress, the instigator, the cruel woman who led the poor, lovesick man astray and then punished him for it. Liam didn't say a word. He just stared, his eyes wide and uncomprehending, looking from his weeping cousin on the ground to his fiancée, pinned against the wall. The foundation of his happy world, already secretly cracked by Daniel's careful hands, gave one final, sickening shudder. You're listening to Inner Echo Stories, Please like and subscribe for more interesting stories. The silence in the apartment was a living thing. It wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, suffocating, filled with everything that wasn't being said. Since the birthday party, Liam moved through the rooms like a ghost. He was polite. He asked if she wanted coffee. He didn't touch her. The space between them in their own bed felt as wide as an ocean. They had talked, of course, Alara had explained, her voice breaking through tears of rage and humiliation. He forced himself on me, Liam. He's lying. It was an act. Liam had listened, his face a mask of pain. But he was on his knees, Alara. He was crying. Why would he do that if he wasn't truly sorry? And you never mentioned knowing him before. Not once. That was the trap. Perfectly sprung. The secret she'd kept to protect him was now the proof of her deceit. She saw the doubt in his eyes, not just about the balcony, but about everything. At a strained family lunch the next weekend, Susan's usual warm hugs were replaced by a stiff, careful smile. Her eyes held a question Alara couldn't answer. John was overly loud, trying to fill the uncomfortable quiet. And Daniel? Daniel was the picture of contrition. I owe everyone an apology, he said, his voice humble, his eyes downcast. Especially you, Liam. I let my old confusion get the better of me. The alcohol is no excuse. I'm so ashamed I've brought this tension into our family. He looked directly at Alara then, his gaze oozing false sincerity. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, Alara. My behavior was unforgivable. He played the repentant sinner so well. The family, clinging to the image of the hero who saved Liam, leaned toward forgiveness. The narrative solidified. A tragic, drunken lapse from a man who loved too deeply, complicated by the mysterious history Alara had hidden. That night, Liam sat on the edge of the bed, not looking at her. I need some time to think, Alara, to process all of this. His words were gentle, but they were a door closing. The moment he left the room, her phone buzzed. An unknown number, now familiar. See who they believe now? Do you finally understand how serious I am? The despair that washed over her was total. It was a riptide, pulling her under. She packed a bag, her hands shaking. She could leave, disappear. This was a war she couldn't win against a sniper hiding behind the shield of family. As she zipped the bag shut, her eyes fell on a framed photo on her dresser. It was a test shot from their engagement session. They were both laughing, caught in a moment of pure, unguarded joy. Liam's eyes were crinkled at the corners, looking at her like she'd hung the moon. She loved him. Not the idea of him, but the man who brought her soup when she was sick, who remembered her mother's birthday, whose integrity was the core of who he was. And that man was about to hand over his life savings to a con artist. He was going to lose his money, his family's trust, and possibly his future, all because of a vicious ghost from her past that she had let into their lives. A cold, clear clarity cut through the despair. Running was what Daniel wanted. It would make his story the only story. It would leave Liam broken and bankrupt. No, she unzipped the bag. She wasn't the naive girl from 5 years ago. She was a project manager. Her job was to identify risks, gather data, and execute a plan to neutralize them. Daniel had made it personal. She would make it strategic. Her mind, sharpened by adrenaline, went to work. The past. She needed the past. She dug out an old phone, charged it, and scrolled through ancient contacts. The name appeared. Sarah Kay. A university friend of Daniel's from back then. Sarah had pulled her aside once, her face serious. Just be careful with him, Alara. He's not what he seems. She'd been too in love to listen. Her fingers trembled as she typed a message, reintroducing herself after 5 silent years, explaining only that it was urgent. Sarah called within an hour. Her voice was wary but kind. Alara, wow, I heard you were engaged. To his cousin? She listened as Alara laid out the bare bones, the blackmail, the threats, the business deal. Sarah let out a long, weary sigh. God, he hasn't changed at all. Just got better at it. Over here, it was the same pattern. Love bomb, isolate, exploit, emotional manipulation, then financial. There are others. Others? Alara breathed. I can put you in touch. 2 women. They tried to warn people, but he's convincing. They have evidence. Screenshots, emails, recordings. They've been waiting for someone to listen. A new email address appeared in Alara's inbox. She created a secure, anonymous account and made contact. The response was a floodgate opening. Emails arrived, laden with attachments. Photos of Daniel, arm in arm with a fresh-faced blonde at a vineyard, with a brunette at a gallery opening. The women were different, but the look in their eyes in the early pictures was the same. Adoring, trusting. The later messages told stories of coercion, of sudden debts they owed him, of intimate photos threatened with exposure. Then, a direct message popped up on the secure chat from a woman named Mia. And he used the sonogram on me, too, Mia wrote. Said it was from a pregnancy I terminated after he gave me money. He said he'd kept it to remember the baby we lost. It was horrible. I felt so guilty, but also confused, because I never slept with him. We only went on 3 dates. I got a restraining order, but he'd already moved on. Ilara's blood turned to ice in her veins. She stared at the words until they blurred. I never slept with him. Her fingers flew to her keyboard. The sonogram. Do you still have it? A file downloaded. She opened it. It was a grainy black and white ultrasound image. A tiny bean-shaped blur. The date in the corner was different from hers. The name at the top was different. But the image, it was identical. The same stock photo, the same blurry baby, just with different digital metadata superimposed. The floor seemed to drop away. The keystone of his blackmail, the tangible proof of their tragic past, the weapon he'd used to shatter her will, was a cheap, reusable forgery, a prop in his sick, repetitive play. She wasn't just fighting for her future now. She was uncovering a pattern, a trail of ruined lives. And for the first time since Daniel walked into that dining room, she didn't feel despair. She felt a cold, focused fury. She had her first piece of real evidence. The house of cards he'd built was about to meet a very deliberate wind. The message took 5 minutes to compose and a lifetime of resolve to send. Ilara's finger hovered over the screen before pressing it, a final, silent prayer for strength. I can't fight you anymore. I'll help you. We need to talk. Meet me. The reply was almost instant. Smart girl, the Oak Barrel, 8 p.m., back booth. The Oak Barrel was a dark, quiet lounge, with high-backed leather booths that promised privacy. Ilara arrived first, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. On her wrist, she wore a delicate silver bracelet Liam had given her for her last birthday. It has a little microphone, he'd said, laughing, for when you have brilliant ideas on the go. Press the clasp to record. She'd thought it was a silly, sweet gadget. Tonight, it was her most vital weapon. Daniel slid into the booth opposite her. He looked pleased, his eyes scanning her face for signs of defeat. She made sure he saw them. She kept her shoulders slumped, her gaze downcast, twisting a napkin in her lap. You look tired, he said, not unkindly, the predator softening its voice before the strike. I am, she whispered, letting her voice waver. I'm exhausted. I can't lose him. Tell me what you want me to do. Just make it stop. A triumphant gleam flickered in his eyes. He ordered a whiskey, neat, and leaned forward. It's simple. Liam trusts you. He's hesitant because of the tension between us. You need to reassure him. Tell him you've looked over the business plan. I'll send you a simple version. And you think it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Be enthusiastic. Tell him to sign the partnership agreement on Friday. She nodded meekly. And then, after he invests the money? Daniel took a slow sip of his drink, savoring it. Then the company, our offshore shell, begins operating. There will be a few months of positive reports. Then, unfortunately, unforeseen market crashes, bad debts. The money will be moved, dissolved. A tragic business loss. Liam will be heartbroken, but he'll recover, and he smiled, will be far away with the resources to start over. She forced herself to look at him, to play her part. We? He reached across the table, his fingers brushing her hand. She fought the urge to snatch it back. Come with me, Ilara. It could be like it was. Better. We'll have real money, no more playing small-town games. Liam is a good man, but he's simple. He's not for you. You need someone who understands ambition, who isn't afraid to take what he wants. It was nauseating. She let a single, strategic tear escape, wiping it quickly. But he trusts you so much. He loves you like a brother. The story about you saving him from drowning, he tells everyone. This was the bait. She saw the whiskey was working, loosening his vanity, his need to boast. Daniel leaned back, a smug, ugly smile spreading across his face. He actually chuckled, a low condescending sound. That story. That's the best part. He took another drink, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. The poor, grateful fool. He's been thanking me for his life for over a decade. Ilara's blood ran cold, but she kept her face a mask of confused curiosity. She pressed the clasp of her bracelet, feeling a tiny, almost imperceptible vibration against her skin, recording. "What do you mean?" she breathed. His eyes glazed with memory and malice. "We were fighting. He was always so righteous, even as a kid. He found out I'd taken money from his mother's purse. He was going to tell. We were by the lake at the old summer house. He was yelling, turning to leave. I just gave him a little shove. He wasn't supposed to hit his head on the dock. He went under and didn't come up." Daniel swirled the amber liquid in his glass. For a second, I thought, well, that's that. Problem solved. But then I saw Old Man Jenkins across the lake, watching. So I jumped in, pulled the idiot out, performed my little hero act, and I've owned him ever since. The room seemed to tilt. The depth of his cruelty was bottomless. It wasn't just blackmail or fraud. It was a lifetime of calculated, violent manipulation rooted in a near murder. Ilara felt a scream building in her throat. She swallowed it, replacing it with a shaky, compliant nod. I see. He mistook her horror for awe. So you see, he's mine, and soon everything he has will be ours. You just have to play your part. She pretended to be swayed, overwhelmed. She let him talk more, drawing out details about the fake company, the bank in the Caymans, the name Victor. She was a sponge, absorbing every damning word, her bracelet quietly preserving it all. Finally, she pleaded a headache, the need to think. He let her go, confident of his victory. At home, she locked the door and transferred the audio file to 3 different secure clouds. Her hands were steady now, fueled by a blazing, righteous fury. She contacted Sarah immediately. The drowning, the summer at Willow Lake. We need anyone who was there, anyone who saw them fight. Within hours, Sarah had a name, Mark, a childhood friend who'd been visiting his grandparents nearby. A few messages later, Mark was on a video call, his face grim. I never forgot it. I was fishing from the other side. I saw them arguing. Liam was pointing at Daniel, yelling. Daniel shoved him hard. Liam stumbled backward off the dock. Daniel stood there for what felt like forever, just watching him flail. Then he suddenly jumped in. I always thought it was weird how long he waited. It was the final, crucial corroboration. The next morning, her phone rang. Daniel's number. She took a deep, centering breath before answering. The contracts are being couriered to Liam's office, he said, his voice brisk, businesslike. Your final act. Call him. Sound excited. Tell him to sign. Ilara looked out her window at the clear blue sky. For the first time in months, she felt calm. The fear was gone, burned away by the fire of truth. I'll talk to him, she said, her voice cool, even, and utterly devoid of its former tremor. But first, I want to meet you one last time. Bring everything you have on me. The sonogram, any photos, any proof. We'll make the exchange. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a beat of surprised silence. The shift in her tone had registered. An exchange, he asked, suspicion creeping in. Yes, Ilara said, a thread of steel in her voice. You give me my past, and I'll give you your future. Another pause, shorter this time, then a low, intrigued chuckle. He mistook her confidence for a new kind of game, a final negotiation. All right, tonight, my place. 9 p.m., don't be late. The call ended. Ilara placed the phone gently on the table. The mouse had just invited the cat to dinner, and the cat, arrogant to the last, had no idea the mouse was now a wolf. The hours before 9 o'clock were a silent flurry of preparation. Ilara sat at her kitchen table, her tools laid out before her like surgical instruments. First, the silver bracelet, its clasp clicked to the record position. Next, her phone, set to record audio in a hidden app, placed screen down in her jacket's inner pocket, microphone facing out. She checked the battery on a small power bank. She was leaving nothing to chance. She sent a final coded message to the group chat she'd named The Lighthouse, Sarah and Mia. Storm watch tonight. Be ready at the window. Signal at 9:10. They replied with simple thumbs-up emojis. Soldiers ready. The hardest part was the call she made next. She dialed Liam's number. He picked up after 4 rings, his voice guarded. Ilara. I don't expect you to believe me right now, she said, her voice clear and steady. No trace of the pleading from previous conversations. But tonight at 9:10 p.m. exactly, I need you to join a video call. The link will text to you. Please, just listen. Don't say anything, just listen. After that, you can decide what you believe. There was a long silence. She could hear his breath on the line, could feel his confusion and hurt radiating through the phone. "What is this about?" he finally asked, his voice tired. "It's about the truth, all of it. Please, Liam. For us." Another pause, then a single resigned word. "Okay." It was all she could ask for. She ended the call, her heart aching for the pain she knew he was in, pain she had inadvertently caused. "After tonight," she whispered to the empty room, "you'll understand." At 8:58 p.m., she stood outside Daniel's apartment door in the sleek downtown building. The hallway was quiet and personal. She took one last deep breath, smoothing her jacket, and knocked. The door swung open. Daniel stood there, leaning against the frame, a half-full glass of amber liquid in his hand. His apartment was minimalist, all sharp edges and cold surfaces like a showroom. He smirked, his eyes sweeping over her. "Right on time. Come on in, princess." She stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind her with a sound of terrible finality. On the glass coffee table, 2 items were prominently displayed. One was a thick, formal document, the partnership agreement. The other was a thick manila envelope. "I'm a man of my word," Daniel said, gesturing to the envelope with his glass. "I brought what you asked for. Everything I have on you. Now, you fulfill your part. Call Liam. Now." Ilara walked slowly to the coffee table but didn't sit. She picked up the envelope. It felt heavy with malice. She opened it, tipping the contents onto the glass surface. There were a few old printed photos of them together from years ago, her younger face smiling obliviously. Then, the sonogram. The fake. And beneath it, several sheets of paper. She picked one up. It was a fabricated chat log, with generic profile pictures showing a conversation where a user named Ilara25 confessed to getting pregnant for money and then dealing with it so she could pursue the richer brother. It was clumsy, obvious, but to a hurt, suspicious family, it would be a bomb. Sign the agreement, convince him, or that gets emailed to Liam, his parents, and everyone they know by sunrise, Daniel said, his voice calm, conversational. He took a sip of his drink, watching her, enjoying what he thought was her surrender. Ilara held the fake chat log. She looked from the grainy printout to his smug face. All the fear, the tension, the weeks of torment crystallized into a single pure point of action. She didn't crumple it. She took the edges in both hands and, with a slow, deliberate motion, tore it cleanly in half. The rip was loud in the quiet room. She dropped the 2 pieces. They fluttered onto the coffee table like dead leaves. "The show's over, Daniel," she said, her voice not loud, but piercingly clear. His smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion, and then dawning anger. "What did you just do?" "I ended it." Ilara reached into her jacket and pulled out her phone. With a few quick taps, she initiated the group video call. She placed the phone on the coffee table, screen up, leaning it against the whiskey bottle. The screen lit up, dividing into squares. In one square was Sarah, her face set in grim determination. In another was Mia, her eyes wide but unwavering. And in the largest square was Liam. He was in his home office, his face pale and stunned on the screen, his hand half covering his mouth. Daniel stumbled back a step, as if physically struck. His glass tilted, spilling whiskey onto the pristine rug. What is this?" he stammered, his eyes darting from the screen to Ilara's calm face. "This is your audience," Ilara said. She looked directly at the phone, at Liam's square. "You asked me to talk to him, Daniel. So let's talk." She turned her gaze back to him. "You just attempted to blackmail me with forgeries to secure my help in defrauding Liam out of $500,000. You admitted to it all last night. And you did it in front of witnesses." "You're insane!" Daniel barked, a desperate laugh escaping him. He pointed at the phone. "Liam, she's setting me up. She's trying to turn you against me because she's guilty." Ilara didn't raise her voice. She simply pressed play on the audio file she'd queued up on her phone. Daniel's own voice, slightly slurred from whiskey but unmistakable, filled the room from the phone's speaker. The poor, grateful fool. "We were fighting. I just gave him a little shove. He wasn't supposed to hit his head. I jumped in, pulled the idiot out, performed my little hero act, and I've owned him ever since." The color drained from Daniel's face completely, leaving him a bloodless, ghastly white. He looked at the phone, at Liam's frozen, horrified image, and at the other women watching. His mask of charm and confidence shattered, revealing the frantic, cornered animal beneath. That's edited, taken out of context," he shouted, but the terror in his eyes betrayed him. On the screen, Liam slowly lowered his hand from his mouth. His eyes, filled with a storm of betrayal and anguish, were fixed not on Alara, but on his cousin. The foundation of a lifetime, the debt, the gratitude, the brotherhood, was collapsing in real time before him. Alara picked up her phone, holding it so the camera captured Daniel's crumbling face. "The context," she said, her voice the steady, calm eye of the hurricane she had created, "is that you're a fraud, a liar, and you tried to murder the only person who ever truly loved you. And tonight, everyone finally knows it." The dining room in Liam's parents' home was set for a Sunday brunch, sunlight streaming across the polished table. The air, however, was thick with an unspoken tension. Alara had called it a family clearing of the air. Susan had arranged the plates with nervous hands. John stood stoic by the sideboard, and Liam sat beside Alara, his posture rigid, his hand occasionally finding hers under the table, a tentative, searching touch that gave her a surge of fragile hope. Daniel arrived last, his entrance a study in wounded dignity. His eyes were shadowed, his shoulders slumped in a convincing show of remorse. He didn't meet anyone's gaze directly. "Thank you for having me," he said, his voice rough. "I know I don't deserve it. After everything, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For the trouble, for the pain, I'll be on a flight out tomorrow. I think it's best for everyone if I just disappear." It was a masterful performance designed to elicit a last-minute pardon, to paint him as a tragic figure, leaving for the greater good. Alara placed her napkin neatly on the table. The soft sound seemed loud in the quiet room. "Before you pack," she said, her voice clear and calm, "there are a few things the family should see to make sure there are no lingering misunderstandings." Daniel's eyes shot to hers, a flicker of alarm breaking through the sadness. "Alara, please, haven't we put everyone through enough?" "This won't take long," she said, picking up the small remotum for the living room TV, which was visible through the arched doorway. With a click, the screen came to life. The first image was a collage, photos Sarah had provided. Daniel with his arm around a smiling blonde at a ski resort. Daniel leaning close to a brunette at a charity gala. Daniel with a redhead on a boat. The women were different, but his expression, the possessive, charming smirk, was identical. Susan gasped softly. The screen changed. Now it displayed a transcript with a timestamp of the audio recording from the bar. Key phrases highlighted: offshore shell. The money will be moved, dissolved. Liam is a good man, but he's simple. John's face darkened, his lawyer's mind absorbing the evidence. Then a video call, recording appeared, split screen. On one side, Mark, the childhood friend, looking earnest. On the other, a digital map of Willow Lake with a marker. "I saw him shove Liam," Mark said, his voice firm. "He waited. He watched him struggle before he jumped in." Daniel was on his feet, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. "This is insane. Edited clips and paid liars. Liam, you can't believe this." Alara didn't look at him. She reached into her bag and placed two items gently on the tablecloth. First, the fake sonogram photo, then a printed sheet of paper. She slid the paper toward John, who picked it up with a trembling hand. "It's a receipt," Alara said, her voice gaining strength, ringing through the stunned room. "From a dark web forum, ordered and paid for by an account linked to Daniel, for custom, realistic sonogram props." She finally turned her gaze to Daniel, who looked as if he'd been struck. "How many of us were there? How many women did you trap with this same piece of plastic? Threatening us, extorting us, destroying our reputations to get what you wanted?" The room was a vacuum, all sound sucked out. Then, John placed the paper down. He stood, the authority in the room shifting to him. His voice, when he spoke, was like ice cracking. "It's over, Daniel. I've had my suspicions since you returned, flashing credentials that felt thin. I made some calls, to old colleagues in New York, to international fraud units." He paused, letting each word land. "Your thriving American company filed for bankruptcy 2 years ago. You are a person of interest in 3 countries for investment fraud and cross-border con schemes. Interpol has a file. You didn't come home for family. You came home because you'd run out of places to hide, and you saw a soft target in your own flesh and blood." Daniel's mask shattered completely. The charming cousin, the remorseful sinner, vanished. What was left was a cornered, desperate man, his eyes darting wildly between the condemning faces. He lurched toward Liam, his hands out in supplication. "Liam, brother, please, I was I was jealous, okay? You had everything, the family, the love, the future. I just wanted a piece of it. Forgive me. You have to forgive me. Liam had been silent throughout, a statue of grief and dawning fury. Now he slowly rose to his feet. He looked at the man he had once called a hero, his eyes red-rimmed but dry, his jaw set. The childhood hero was gone, replaced by the truth, a venomous, calculating stranger. You were my idol, Liam said, his voice husky but unwavering. I built a shrine to you in my heart. The debt I felt, it shaped me. He shook his head, a single final motion. But that man never existed. You're just a thief. You tried to steal my money, my trust, and the woman I love. He took a steadying breath. The police are waiting outside. They have all the evidence. The show is really over this time. As if on cue, a firm knock echoed through the house. Susan started to cry, silent tears of relief and sorrow. John moved toward the door. Daniel stood frozen in the center of the dining room, surrounded by the ruins of his own making. The brilliant facade finally, utterly collapsed. In the heavy silence after the front door closed, and a different kind of quiet settled over the living room. It was a space waiting to be filled with truth. The adrenaline that had carried Alara through the confrontation drained away, leaving her trembling. She sank onto the sofa, and the tears she'd held back for weeks, for years, finally broke free. Not the silent tears of fear, but deep shuddering sobs of release and old grief. Susan was beside her in an instant, wrapping her in an embrace that smelled of lavender and home. Oh, my dear girl, my dear, brave girl, what did he do to you? And so, with Liam sitting stiffly across from her, his face a landscape of shock and dawning comprehension, and John standing sentinel by the fireplace, Alara told them everything. The summer romance with the dazzling older cousin, the whirlwind intensity, the positive pregnancy test, the cold, brutal abandonment. She told them about the loneliness, the difficult choice she'd made, and the shame she'd carried like a secret stone. I never told Liam, she whispered, her voice raw, because I was terrified. I thought my past made me damaged. I thought if you knew, you'd never see me the same. And when he walked in, it was my worst nightmare coming to life. I was so scared of losing all of you. Liam listened, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he didn't speak for a long time. The clock on the mantel ticked. Finally, he stood, crossed the room, and knelt before her on the rug. He took her shaking hands in his own grip warm and sure. Look at me, he said softly. She met his gaze, seeing the pain there, but also a clarity that had been missing for weeks. I'm so sorry, he said, each word weighted. I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm sorry I let his performance cloud what I knew in my heart. I almost lost you to a ghost. I will never forgive myself for that. John cleared his throat, his voice gruff with emotion. The only person here who needs forgiveness is the one who just left in handcuffs. You survived him. Both of you. That's what matters now. A week later, Liam drove Alara to a sleek, modern building downtown. She looked at him, confused. What is this? You'll see, he said, a gentle, determined smile on his face. He led her inside to a bright, welcoming office called the Resilience Center, support for victims of coercive control and emotional fraud. A kind-faced director showed them around, explaining the therapy groups, the legal advocacy, the workshops on rebuilding. We help people understand it wasn't their fault, the director said. We help them get their power back. After the tour, Liam led Alara to a quiet bench in the building's atrium. He took a small, wrapped box from his pocket. I wanted to do something, he said, his voice thick. Not just for us, but for others like you, like Sarah and Mia. I've made a donation in our names to fund a new program here. He placed the box in her hands. And this is for you, for our future. She opened it. Nestled inside was her original engagement ring, now flanked by two smaller, brilliant stones on a new band. A fresh start, Liam whispered. Underneath the ring was a gift certificate. She read it. 1-year membership and self-defense course. Iron Willow Women's Defense Academy. He saw the question in her eyes. The ring is my promise to always see you, to always choose you. The class is my promise to help you never feel powerless again. We do this together. Their wedding 3 months later was not the large event they'd first planned. It was in a sun-dappled garden, with only their closest friends and family. Sarah and Mia were there, smiling from the second row, tangible proof that beauty can grow from shared pain. When it was time for her speech, Alara stood, her simple dress swaying, and looked at the faces of her new family. Her voice was steady, clear. "I used to think happiness was a fragile, perfect thing you had to hide away to protect," she said, her eyes finding Liam's. "I was wrong. Real happiness isn't fragile, it's strong. It's built on truth, even when the truth is hard. It's fortified by courage, the courage to face your past, and the courage to fight for your future. And it's anchored by a trust that's strong enough to stare into the darkness and not let go." Liam raised their joined hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles, his eyes shining. "I trust you," he said, his vow carrying through the quiet garden. "Every word, every day." 1 year later, the morning sun streamed into a different nursery, painting a rocking chair in gold. Ilara hummed softly, cradling their newborn daughter, Isla, whose tiny fingers curled around her thumb. Liam slept in the armchair nearby, exhausted and blissful. On the bookshelf, a new family photo album lay open. There were pictures from the wedding, from hikes, from lazy Sundays, and there, on a page marked Friendship, was a photo of Alara and Liam, flanked by Sarah and Mia, all of them laughing on a picnic blanket, a sisterhood forged in fire. Ilara's phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number. She picked it up carefully so as not to disturb the baby. "And it's Sarah. The verdict came down, 8 years, federal charges included. He won't see sunlight for a long time. Mia says thank you. We all do. You gave us the courage to speak." Alara looked at the message, then at her sleeping husband, then at her daughter's peaceful face. She didn't reply. She simply deleted the message, the last ghost of that old nightmare. She leaned down, pressed a kiss to Isla's downy head, and then reached over to squeeze Liam's hand. He stirred, his eyes opening to meet hers. No words were needed. The quiet in the room was no longer filled with tension, but with a deep, enduring peace. I learned something through all of it. The past can come back to haunt you, but you're not the person you were back then. You're stronger, you're wiser, and sometimes the thing you fear the most, the ghost from your darkest chapter, it turns out to be the final lesson. The one that teaches you just how strong you really are. Strong enough to build a happiness that lasts forever.
So, what do you think about this story? I could really picture Elara feeling so happy and safe with Liam's family. And I was so gasped when Daniel walked in, and I feel so scared for Elara right away. I got so mad when Daniel started blackmailing her. What a creep. So, if you like this story or you dislike, just tell me. Please share your comment below and subscribe for more interesting stories. Thank you for your listening.